This episode of the Old Dogs REI Network is brought to you by Mino Studio.
In a world where jobs are how most people make money, one man, one desire, one challenge dares to break the mold. Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where we don't work for money. Money works for us. Coming soon. Viewer discretion advised.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where cash flow is king. Real estate investing, the means, so you can enjoy your retirement dreams. This is the show where we cut right to the chase. No sales pitch, no long monologues, just simple how-to real estate investing advice, so you can earn the passive income you need to enjoy your retirement today. And now, your host and chief old dog, Bill Manacero.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network. I'm your host, Bill Manacero, and this is a show where 50-plussers and anyone else who wants to join us get solid, no sales pitch real estate investing advice to help generate real cash flow. This podcast airs twice weekly on Mondays and Fridays, and if you aren't already a subscriber, go to iTunes, type in Old Dog, spelled D-A-W-G, find our podcast and subscribe. Well, we have a great show for you today. You know, we always talk about we're a bunch of old dogs, 50 years of age and older and so forth. And you know, the reality is one, a lot of people listen to this show that are not even near 50. And then we also have a lot of guests on too that also aren't quite old dogs yet. And although our focus is really toward that group, there's just a lot of folks that don't necessarily fall into that. And I think it's good because I think it's one that's really great because the younger pups, so to speak, can learn from the older dogs and and vice versa. You know, I think the old dogs can learn from the young pups that are doing it well. And so I've got one of those young pups with us here today, and his name is Jason Harris. Now, Jason and his wife, Carrie, are partners in life and partners in real estate. Together, they've built a large portfolio of real estate investments comprised mostly of small multifamily buildings. And they have been able to acquire most of these, which is going to be real interesting, through different types of creative seller financing. Now, Jason is 33, so he is definitely a young pup, and his wife, Carrie, is 31. They've been married 9 years coming this July and live in Linden, Utah, and that's in the northern part of Utah near Provo and Orem. Now, Jason was a financial advisor and Carrie a real estate broker. In 2010, Jason wanted to invest in real estate full-time, but chose to pursue a career in financial services instead and just invest in real estate on the side. And even though his real estate company grew significantly, and he was at one point earning more money than he was in his day job, he still continued working as a financial advisor because he really enjoys helping people, especially helping people achieve their financial goals. And it wasn't until very recently that he left his financial advising career to pursue real estate full-time. Now, Jason and Carrie, this is very impressive stuff here, currently own 81 units and counting. Their real estate portfolio is estimated at $13 million and generates $1.2 million in gross scheduled income. All of their sales transactions have been low to no money down deals with good cash flow. They love real estate and are grateful for how much it has impacted their lives, and they want to help others achieve the same. Well, welcome, Jason, to the Old Dogs REI Network.
Hi, Bill. Thanks so much. That was a nice introduction. Appreciate that.
Well, you've got a very impressive background. Man, by 33, I wish I had my act that well together when I was 33. I mean, that is really, and you guys have been married a long time, too. I'm going, man, what'd you get married, like 10? No.
We were young, yes.
Just teasing you, but it's not that long. But it's so great. One, that you guys are partners in this, which is really exciting when you both have a love of the same thing and you can use each other's skills, and plug them in where you need to in the business to make it work. I mean, that's got to be pretty exciting in itself.
I think it was a big part of it too. Yeah, when you're both on board and passionate about something, if both spouses aren't as eager, sometimes that can slow you down or keep you from chasing your goals and going after it. And unfortunately, we both had the same vision, which certainly helped.
That's really neat. Now, just out of curiosity, my first thought was when I saw that she was a real estate broker, I mean, were you already looking for real estate and you happened to find her as a broker, or this was after, I mean, you were already married before you went into this?
No, everything grew organically for us. 2014, she got her license as an agent. I was her number one client, pretty much her only client.
Really? Okay, so it was in business that you met her. Oh, that's neat. Okay.
Yeah, and so it was just funny. I kept buying things. I loved getting as many rental properties as we could, and in time up a portfolio that I think was significant enough that others started to recognize what we were doing to build passive income for what we were more planning is for retirement, but began to impact us immediately. And so others took note of that, and then Carrie became an agent for others, even though that wasn't her initial plan. And in time, we've done enough transactions. She got her broker's license a year or so ago, and now we have agents who are mainly investor-minded who work for us now, helping others do the same thing we've done.
Well, neat. Well, why don't you, I'm kind of asking you questions already before I really ask you to just kind of give me your background and how you actually got involved in real estate in the first place. Would you mind just kind of sharing, how it kind of all came together?
Yeah, it goes back to a little bit of my childhood. Just my parents financially struggled. My dad was a very good employee and I felt like was very loyal, worked really hard, but unfortunately, during different times in his career, there were layoffs that took place during the housing market crisis and the tech bubble crisis. And during those mergers and downsizing, my dad, not being the most tenured employee often, was laid off. And so just saw these struggles. So I, at an early age, just didn't want to depend on a company to take care of me and my finances. So as a young kid, I was reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad and The Total Money Makeover, which I guess was later on when it came out, and books that just fed my mind with different material than what I had been told by my social circle. And I think that then helped me have a mindset of I needed to do things different and start investing in my future. And so I saved 75% of everything I earned. By the time I was done with high school, I think I had about $200 to my name. Just kidding. It was more than that. You just don't make a whole lot of money. But I had the principles that I had been living, and I continued to do that. As I began making more money, I trained myself to put away a certain for my future, and then came into real estate knowing that it was a good option. And I don't know if you want me to go into detail about that, but when I married Carrie, her grandpa had said that he made more money in real estate than he had as a State Farm agent in his career. And so she knew that real estate was something that she wanted to do. Her mom and dad owned a duplex and wanted to sell that to go to a fourplex. And I was recently a part of the family and asked if I could take them to dinner and had this big pitch on how I was going to add all the value if they'd let me in on being a part of that. And that they were kind enough to let me have that conversation. But through that, we met with the agent and found out that we may be able to buy something on our own. And that's when I learned about FHA financing up to 4 units. And so we started looking for ourselves, and I just became obsessed with finding the right type of property that would then allow us to buy a fourplex with a little bit of money down and essentially wipe out what we were paying at that time in rent for an apartment, and then be able to save that money and put it away for our next deal. And so that's literally how we got started. We bought a fourplex when I was 24 and Carrie was 22. and that was our first home, and the rent income from the other 3 units covered our full mortgage. And so we were able to save almost $1,000 a month that we had been spending in rent and being able to save from my day job income. And we snowballed that into saving for another property, and that was the story.
When were you a financial advisor in this? I mean, when you before you got married, shortly after, whereabouts did that happen?
Yeah, so we bought that property in 2010, and I became a financial financial advisor in 2012 with Edward Jones, and then actually today is my very last day, Bill. So I had put in my notice a while back, but through a transition period, this is my final day. So it's kind of an exciting time where real estate's been my passion of what I've wanted to do for a long time, and now I'm walking away from a great career that I really enjoyed, but now able to do full-time what I really love.
Wow, that is so exciting. I wish I would have known that. I would have sent you a cake or something. We could.
Hey, it's not too late.
Yeah, maybe I can Skype one to you, or something. Wow, that is really neat. I mean, so you're a financial planner technically, right? So you work with people in annuities and stocks and bonds and all different types of things, right?
Absolutely. Most of my clientele are the old dogs, so I've been learning from them for a long time and hopefully teaching them a thing or two as well.
Oh, that's neat. That's really neat. Now, are you do you maintain those clients, or when you officially leave, you have to hand them over to somebody else, or you sell your practice? I don't know how that works.
So at Edward Jones, you're not an independent advisor, so I didn't own my book of business. They do have a retirement plan available when you stay a certain period of time. I wasn't wanting to stay that long, and so I actually gave that up. However, it worked out very well in that my brother-in-law was an advisor in the past, and he's taking over my practice. So it's at least going to someone I care about and hope that he can continue to succeed and grow it from there.
Oh, that's great. So you're kind of keeping it in the family. That's neat.
Yeah, in some ways.
Now, so I assume, okay, so you started off, that was your first house, the fourplex, right? Our first home, and you were house hacking, right? I mean, just out of the chute.
Correct, yeah. It was scary and exciting all at the same time.
Now, did you get one of those 3% FHA loans or 3% down?
It ended up being about 4% or 4.3% in order to make the numbers work. The rent income from the other 3 have to cover all of the mortgage expenses. And so we barely qualified by $6, I think it was.
Oh, wow.
We had to be creative in using a 5-1 ARM, so a 5-year fixed rate, which lowered the interest rate just enough to get us to qualify.
Gotcha. And now with that type of loan, do you also have to pay a mortgage insurance too?
You do, yeah.
Okay, so did that add much on to take away from your cash flow?
At that time, I think it added $160 for the size of the loan we had.
That's not too bad.
No, it wasn't too bad. The rent income still covered it from the other 3 units, and so for us, it wasn't something coming out of our own pocket.
And with an FHA loan, how long are you required to live in that property before you can move?
The intention is you live there a year or more. And we lived there for almost 3 years, roughly. We were very fortunate that we bought during the first-time home buyer credit that was offered for $8,000.
Wow, that's great.
Because it was our primary residence, we qualified. We got the $8,000. We got the security deposits from the tenants. We got prorated rents for the month that we took title, as well as another month of rent income. I had all my down payment back within 2 months.
That's fantastic. Oh, man. That is great.
Money concept. Yeah, we put our money into it, got our money out, retained the asset, increased the income over time, so the cash flow got better. And then when we moved out of it 2 or 3 years later, we were able to rent out our apartment, and that was all pure cash flow for us.
That's great. Now, did you do any improvements to the property?
We did the unit that we lived in, and that's something maybe I would have changed, now knowing what I know. But we improved our property we lived in, and because it had been updated when we moved out, we were able to get quite a bit more in rent for ours than we were from the others. which that then obviously helped us cash flow when we moved on to our next property.
And as other units became available, did you upgrade those as well?
Yeah, when I had the money available to do so, there was natural increase in rent demand, so I was able to raise rents just because the overall economy and market was strong. But we were able to do little value add opportunities to our building as well that allowed us to ask and demand a little more in rent.
That's neat. And Utah is a hot area, just like Idaho and a lot of sort of northwest states that are just going crazy right now. I imagine you have already seen this property appreciate quite a bit, I would imagine.
Bill, we bought purely for cash flow, and we've been so grateful for all the appreciation that we've received and that has happened here in Utah over the last 5 to 8 years. It's been very significant, and I was going to get into this later, but that property and a couple other fourplexes we own we're now selling for more than $1 million in equity and rolling it into 60 to 80 units now in Kansas City in a 1031 exchange just from those 3 properties we bought from years past. And again, we put very little down in each of these, and to have over $1 million of equity that we can now put to better work in another market. It's so exciting to see what the return on investment's been.
That's neat. Now, did you do a cash out refi at some point? And if so, how does that work with an FHA loan?
Good question. So you can only have one FHA at a time unless...
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, unless there's a qualifying reason where you've moved out of state, and there's a couple others that we weren't able to make work. We had to use a portfolio loan for our next property, which was a duplex through U.S. Bank, 10% down with no PMI, up to 2 units. And so that did help us still make our next step into a multifamily unit with less down. However, in time, we did do a cash out refinance and took some of the equity we had in our fourplex in order to buy more property. And so, yes, that was a few years later that we did that.
Gotcha. So how soon did you buy that second property?
It was right about 3 years, 3.5 years.
Oh, so you waited a little while.
My biggest mistake, yes. I didn't have the knowledge that I just figured you have to save up and wait till you have enough of a down payment. I didn't know about different loan options that were available for me. And so I did find out about that. I was saving up to have 25% down because I thought that's what I needed. And so I thought it was going to take a long time. And then we started to learn more and network and found out about this loan product, which allowed us to eventually buy that duplex. And then we started to scale a lot faster from there.
This is really interesting. I think it's great information. One, that you could get a 10% loan. I mean, that a lot of people don't realize that those kinds of products exist. Now, would you say U.S. Bank is a portfolio lender for the most part?
Yeah, I think they have some pretty good products, both as non-owner occupied and owner occupied. We have some credit unions also here locally that are very competitive in the investment or non-owner occupied lending area as well. And so that's been a big key to our success of being able to scale a lot faster than we otherwise would have been able to.
Did you work with the U.S. Bank and those credit unions in some of your early properties?
Yes, and continue to today.
That's great. Now, were you buying primarily in Utah when you started out?
Almost all of my properties are in Utah County specifically.
Oh, wow.
I do a couple in Salt Lake and then a few in Roosevelt, Vernal area that were a short sale that we picked up for a very good deal. But yes, primarily everything is in Utah County.
So are you self-managing because they're so close by?
In the beginning we were, but then I realized my time value was better spent as a financial planner or finding more real estate deals. And so eventually we hired another company out, and then we've grown to a size now where I saw hundreds of thousands of dollars leaving for property management, and that didn't make sense to us. So you get to a certain point where you learn ways to bring that in-house. And so we now have our own property management company that we've salaried someone, and we get to keep the difference or pay our own company out of the expense of our rentals that we used to pay someone else.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So let's say you bought the fourplex, you bought a duplex. Were you still buying sort of the smaller multis for a while?
That's pretty much all we've done, Bill, until maybe the last year or two. And so, yeah, we didn't make a lot of money in our 20s. I had an average job and an average income until I grew my, practice with Edward Jones. My income grew in time, but we had to be scrappy and creative and find ways to do it with less money down, or we didn't know any other way to be able to do it. So, we owner-occupied a few multifamily units, and then we started to owner-occupy single-family units with a legal accessory apartment. And so a big part of our success was keeping our housing cost to a very little amount or absolutely no amount, where we were having tenants cover that expense for us. The National Bureau of Labor Statistics in 2017 said the average the average American spends 32% of their income on housing. And I find it interesting as I've looked back on Carrie and I's success, we've never spent any money on housing because we've always had tenants covering that expense for us. The second biggest expense, and if not the first, are taxes. Real estate's a great tax shelter, and we've used a lot of the deductions real estate's given us to minimize those two biggest expenses that most Americans have to pay for. And so if you could have 60% of your earned income back, Bill, to then do whatever you want with, could that not make a significant impact on your asset accumulation and retirement plan? And that's been my whole mentality is we've saved a lot of money in those two expenses that we've put into assets that now pay us and continue to grow in value over time.
Oh, that's neat. Now, you talk about owner-occupying. So are you always living in one of your rental properties?
No, that just is how we started. And we've done that 4 or 5 times in the last 9 or 10 years. We're in a bigger home now that we really love, but continue to rent out the basement to offset our mortgage.
That's great.
Just smarter to do. And so we're very picky, who we rent to in our basement just because we share our home with someone. And it's worked out very, very well for us. But no, we learned other ways. We began to partner with others. You get to a point where you can only have 10 residential loans per person. And so we've been creative to get my own set of 10 loans and Carrie's own set of 10 loans. And it's kind of funny that we started out both being on the note or the loan and later refinanced into only one of our names. By me buying all the property I did through Carrie as the agent, she began to make enough income that she could qualify to buy property on her own. And that was just an accidental mistake that ended up being a great strategy for us.
Interesting. Now, do you have your properties under LLCs, though, for the asset protection?
We started out by an attorney recommending doing individual LLCs per property, and have since learned that that's an absolute nightmare and not something we recommend. After you have 20 LLCs that you've paid attorneys to set up and your tax person to prepare separate K-1s for each LLC, I'm spending tens of thousands of dollars by that strategy. And so I don't recommend that to my clients and people we represent or work with. I don't think that it's a bad idea, but for us, it was a mistake. And so we've used 2 different things. One, a series LLC for certain properties where we can have all of our taxes flow through just one master LLC, but still have limited liability per property. But furthermore, for a underwriter or loan officer, it's a lot easier for them to now calculate my debt to income and my true income than having to decipher through several different LLCs and what those income are and debts in each individual one, if that makes sense.
Sure.
But a lot of people also use insurance, and so they get an umbrella policy beyond their homeowner's insurance that they use for liability, and that's something that we use for some properties as well.
I see. Interesting. Okay, so you've grown. How many current properties do you have?
We have 28 buildings.
Oh, wow.
That equate to 81 doors. But we have a commercial office building of 23 units under contract that we're going to close on shortly, and then these 3 4-plexes we're exchanging into 64 to 80 units, depending on how that works out. So our number of doors will increase quite significantly here soon, I believe.
Oh, that's great. Going into commercial office space. That's an interesting move.
Yeah. It's our second one that we'll have done in the commercial realm.
Oh, that's great. And the first one worked out well for you?
Yeah, it's worked out well. We love residential more. We have a little more control and experience there, but we've done some in commercial space. It worked out.
So one of the things that's mentioned in your bio is that you have, through most of these, done some very creative things in terms of financing. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, and I have several stories. I'll just give you a couple, I suppose. We've done certain deals that we found off market that we were able to negotiate a price that we knew had some upside equity in it. And so instead of getting a traditional loan with 25% down, or with a portfolio lender maybe a 15% down, we used a private money lender that was willing to give us 100% financing on the property, short term, that we then did some value add to the property by improving the curb appeal, painting the exterior, removing all the debris and garbage from the yard, and then mowing it, landscaping it, making it look nice, and then going to the tenants and raising the rents. The landlord of this particular property was absentee and wasn't aware of what market rents could be, and so many of them were month to month, and we increased the rents $200 to $250 per apartment, and not a single one of my tenants moved out. They were grateful, actually, that I was taking care of the property and actually cared about its appearance. And they knew that moving somewhere else, they were going to have to pay roughly the same amount. But I had built a little bit of a relationship and rapport with them, and they saw that I was going to take better care of their property than what the previous landlord had done. But once I raised the rents roughly $1,000 a month, the appraiser who came out to reappraise it appraised it for a significantly larger amount. And because I had taken title of the property, I was able to use that equity that we had forced into it and use that as my down payment. And so a month and a half later, I paid off the private money lender and used the equity of my property as my 25% down payment. And so I literally bought the property, this 4-plex, for $3,000 down.
Unbelievable. Now, the private money, was it hard money that you bought?
Yeah, it was a hard money lender.
And in a month and a half, you ramped up enough to increase the equity that much? I
had built up a relationship with the hard money lender. They knew my experience, and they checked the numbers that I had and believed I could fulfill the project. So at this particular time, they were willing to do 100% financing on the deal. And so I didn't have to use any of my own money. And I increased the value of the property enough where we could use the equity now as the down payment.
And how big a property was that?
It was a 4-plex. I bought it for $355. It appraised for $475. I later did a couple updates inside the units and sold it for $562. And so I owned it for about 6 or 7 months and made about $185,000 on it.
That's excellent. And you sold it?
I did. I wanted to keep it, but we were doing other projects and wanted to take the capital to continue doing some of the others that ended up working out really well.
Did you ever take out any more FHA loans?
Honestly, we haven't. I've wanted to use the FHA loan. It's a great loan option to get started for young and older persons wanting to do real estate. But we haven't had a need, and at this point, I don't think we ever will, now where we're at in our business.
And it sounds like, too, you're doing mainly commercial loans at this point anyway, right?
Yeah, we do some residential loans sometimes too, but usually that's a duplex, 4-plex opportunity, and we're not going to live in it, so we can't use the FHA.
Sure. I mean, you mentioned you sold one property. Have you sold a lot of them, or is that do you usually hold on to your properties for the long term?
I don't want to sell anything ever. I want to hold on to all the properties that we have. We have sold a couple. And the only reason why we did is because we either wanted to do a 1031 exchange and take the equity and do something better with it by buying something bigger, or because we needed access to the capital in order to continue with other properties that we were trying to buy.
Gotcha. Wow. You have 28 properties, so you can't really go through each one, but just generally, you started off with the smaller multis, and then you started moving into larger multis, I would assume, before going into office space?
Yeah, well, most of ours are duplexes and fourplexes. We own a 10-plex, and that's our biggest one. We did a 16-plex, but it's technically fourplexes. And then, just recently started doing the 23-unit commercial building and pyramided up into selling some of our fourplexes into much bigger properties, and that's still pretty recent for us. But we used multiple strategies to acquire duplexes and fourplexes like the one just described, or by partnering. If you find a good deal and it's a good enough deal, there's always going to be money or capital available for it. And I would much rather get 50% of an opportunity than 100% of nothing. And so I've found good opportunities, and I've found the right type of people who I knew would be excited about the ability to work together. And in time, I've proven myself in a way where a lot of people have wanted to be the capital, and I'll manage and take over the project and see it to be a good success for us.
Oh, that's neat. And how did you learn? I mean, were you just kind of learning as you were going along? Did you have a mentor? Did you have, training or go through a program?
I am a very analytical and logical person. I love Excel spreadsheets, and I love analyzing the numbers. Being a financial advisor probably has been a big help to that, as I love assessing investments and seeing which ones are good and which ones maybe aren't as good. So I haven't really truly had a mentor. We did a Rich Dad, Poor Dad 3-day seminar before I was a financial advisor in 2011, and I was willing to sell my fourplex, which had maybe 80,000 of equity at the time, to buy their biggest package. I'm so grateful I didn't do that at the time, but that's where my eagerness was. I wanted to learn everything I possibly could. But my wife and I found that it would probably be better for me to be a financial advisor by day and an investor by night. And that was worked out to be a lot better because I had stable income that I could use to get financing on the real estate projects that I was finding. And it made it easier for me to buy these real estate deals that eventually became significant enough income that I was able to walk away from my Edward Jones practice and then do the real estate full time now.
Yeah, that's one lesson. Unfortunately, a lot of people that really they want to leave their day job and they, I've got replacement income, I can do this now. But then the reality hits that W-2 employees have a lot better chance of getting a loan than 1099 employees, and a lot of people don't realize that until they're there.
Correct. Yep.
Well, This is really great. There's some really good stuff here. Quick question too, as you're thinking of office buildings, have you syndicated any of these deals?
We are doing some syndication, but no, these have been mainly us. We have partnered once before with one person, but most of all these have been our own projects that we've either raised our own capital to do. For someone borrowed the money, we borrowed the money for debt financing. Paid an interest rate, but we took 100% equity. We are just starting something to do syndication where the investors could have equity interest in the properties or projects that we're doing. But so far, all of them have been on our own.
Gotcha. Wow. I'm just real impressed. You guys have done really well over a short period of time. And I imagine, especially the diversity of what you've been involved with, not only the types of deals and looking at creative ways to finance, to leverage, not taking in necessarily a lot of outside investors, maybe partnering here and there, but generally, very much the principles on your projects. What would you say is maybe one of the biggest mistakes you made? I know you kind of touched on a little bit there. I don't know if that's the one that you want to zero in on, but what would you say sort of your biggest mistake that you've really learned the most from in your real estate investing so far?
Yeah, Bill, if you look back at it, both in stocks and in real estate, we've been in a long bull market cycle. And so I bought in at a very good time, and I've been fortunate that timing was good for us, right? And so even if I wouldn't have bought a good property doing my analysis well, I think things could have worked out just fine in a good economy that we've been in. And so, fortunately, up to this point, most every real estate deal I've done has worked out very well and has been very lucrative for us. And I recognize it's because the economy's been strong and we've seen good appreciation, which has helped. But my biggest mistake that I feel like in looking back is the limiting belief that I had that you have to save up enough money of 25% down before you can get started. And I didn't buy my next property from 2010 until 2014 because that's what my belief was. And I didn't take action or study enough to learn that there were several other ways like seller financing or lease option purchases, portfolio lenders that I later learned of that I could utilize to get started sooner. And had I been able to take action sooner, I would have been able to buy and acquire quite a few more properties, I believe, and been able to ride this fun appreciation market that we've had, and would have realized a lot more, I think, in equity and properties. But I didn't get started. I didn't network. I didn't learn. And knowledge is power, really, in real estate. And so I didn't have as much knowledge then to know of many other options that I had available to me.
Sure. No, that I can understand that. What would you say your biggest success so far has been?
I really think the biggest success I have is that I am very creative. I know 50 different ways now to buy a property, and I can analyze a deal and know what's probably the best strategy or approach to each given deal. And I think that success has come because I literally was broke. I didn't have a lot of money. I had to be creative in order to make opportunities and deals work. And I realize now that was a huge advantage to me at this point because I really learned the ropes of what lenders want in order to get financing. And so I could negotiate a deal before I even took that deal to the lender, and knowing what that deal needed to look like in order for me to get a yes from the underwriter to move forward with financing. And I'm just grateful I took the time to learn all of the different nuances of different loans and what my debt to income ratios needed to be, what the reserve requirements were, what the down payment percentages are, that the seller could cover my closing cost, or that the lender could cover the closing cost. All these different things that you can do in order to set yourself up better for success. And knowing different strategies if traditional financing doesn't work, that there's still other options, whether it be you or whether it be partnering with someone else that has better credit or could get the loan or has the capital. And I think that's been a huge benefit to me, is finding ways to first make the deal work with little money out of your own pocket, but then after taking ownership of it, how to improve the cash flow of the property, either by reducing the expenses or by increasing the income that you can generate and find its highest and best use.
That's great. So it wasn't so much from experience. I mean, you were doing your own research in terms of, banking requirements and lending and requirements, and just becoming a student of lending options, it sounds like.
Well, when you're poor, Bill, and you go to get a loan and they say you don't make enough money, you hear that enough times where you have to ask the questions, well, what can I do? What does it need to be? Why does it need to be that? How could I get it to where it would be that? I've asked so many questions. I can't imagine what my loan officers were thinking, but I fought almost literally every single time to finally get a yes out of my loan officer. They must have been dead sick and working with me. But I learned all of the different requirements that they have from an underwriting guideline standpoint, that then I knew those little nuances, that each time I went to get the next property, I knew what I needed to do beforehand in order to make it easier for my loan officer and the underwriter to say yes. Because every single time I felt like I told my wife, Carrie, that if we can just make this one deal work, it will make our financial standpoint so much better. We have to find a solution. And so that literally became my obsession that month or 2 months, however long it took to get the deal through and to get the financing through. And man, what a success and celebration it was every time that I felt like they're telling us no, they're telling us it doesn't work, we don't make enough, or this or that's wrong. And so we finally found the solution. And so we just didn't accept no as an answer. There's always a way to make it work. We just needed to know what they needed it to look like or to make happen. And, I guess to give you an example, in time we've built up a number of properties that cash flow, and sometimes we've been able to change who actually owns those properties so they can claim the income for Carrie or for myself, which increases our income and to help us qualify. Maybe you have some debts, credit cards or car loans or things like that you could refinance into a zero balance transfer, or refinance from one spouse's name to another spouse's name. And so while I was trying to buy property, Carrie would carry the debt. She'd have our car loans or our credit card balance in her name so that I didn't have any debt in my name, that I would look stronger to the borrower, or vice versa, depending on who was trying to get the loans. We just wanted to set ourselves up for the best possible chance of getting yes as the answer from the loan officer.
That's interesting. That's great. That is really great. What personal skill or maybe attributes that you may have, you feel have really helped contribute to your success personally?
Well, I mentioned the logical analyzing side. I think that really helps because I know when there's a good deal that's good enough to make work. But I also think that being a financial advisor and just my personality, I really do care about people. I loved my clients that I worked with and represented, and I see that we all need to win in this. I'm not trying to take advantage of the seller who's maybe selling something to me. I need to see to it that he or she benefits from me purchasing the property. And so through my skill as an advisor, I've learned things from a tax strategy standpoint or an asset protection standpoint, or even what are they going to do with the capital if they're getting out of real estate, and how can we make it the best opportunity for them to generate an income for them. So I was always very sincere in my efforts to work with someone and to purchase a property. And I think they felt that and realized that their perspective in the negotiation mattered to me. I wanted to see that it works out well and that they have a variety of options. And I think that really mattered to people where they wanted to work with me. They wanted it to be that I was the buyer of the property. And I've since formed and built relationships with these sellers where sometimes they had other properties that I've been able to buy from them down the road because they enjoyed our experience in working together. And I was able to find solutions that helped minimize the impact to them as far as a tax standpoint when selling, and provide them other options or opportunities to take with that capital to generate an income for them or help them improve their situation financially as they're getting out of real estate or whatever they're trying to do.
Sure. Well, it sounds like you've worked with a great group of clients over the years as well. And they're probably a lot like many of our listeners. We have a lot of folks that are 50 plus that are either approaching retirement or already in retirement. And some of them are concerned about, what their retirement's going to look like. Are they going to have enough of a nest egg? Are they going to have any kind of nest egg? Are they going to be able to, sort of get through the retirement years? And they're looking at real estate investing as a means that might be able to help them out on that. And what kind of advice would you have for folks in that position right now that might be encouraging and maybe help them to look at their options in real estate?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I agree with you completely. I saw it as a financial advisor. Most Americans are not prepared for retirement, and a large majority of them are planning on Social Security to be their only or primary source of income, which is a little bit scary to worry about that being sufficient to cover your needs, because oftentimes it was only meant well, it is only meant to be 40% of what your income needs would be for retirement, and to think to live off of that only is difficult, and a lot of people are in that situation. So a few things that I feel like I've learned. One, the best type of financing available out there is through owner-occupied loans. A lot of people in their 50s or 60s look to downsize from their primary residence, and if you've lived in your primary residence 2 years or more, you can sell your primary residence for a tax-free up to $500,000 if you're married filing jointly, or $250,000 if you're single, and use that equity to buy you potentially a smaller home, or a home that's more conducive to your lifestyle and retirement, maybe just a main level where there's no stairs if you're preparing for your 60s or 70s long-term home and retirement, your older years. But maybe have a apartment underneath it to offset the mortgage cost, and then take the additional capital to buy in markets that have great cash flow. And you can take the equity from your home and use that tax-free to buy some good rental properties that cash flow well, and perhaps get a great financing on a primary residence that's more conducive to your lifestyle in your later years, but still use income from your basement or a casita or something as part of the property to offset the mortgage cost. That's one idea, obviously, that could be of help to people. I think there's always ways that you can utilize capital in a way that you can have a better ROE or ROI on the property. And a lot of people want simplicity and peace of mind in retirement. Depending on your financial situation, you can take that capital and do better things with it, or even look to your children or grandchildren in ways that you could possibly partner with them, or work out something where they could own or occupy a property, and you could do a kiddie condo loan for their benefit and for your own. There's so many different things that one could do.
Yeah, that's great. Well, those are real good points and some great advice. Well, you've got you've got so much time ahead of you. You're such a young guy. What's sort of your long-term play here in real estate investing? Do you have a long-term goal, or even a short-term goal that is going to bring you where you want to be?
Goals are a moving target. You get close to achieving a goal and you realize, I could have set my sights higher, or I could have pushed for more. I wanted to retire with a certain amount of units, and I've already surpassed that amount of units, and I'm only 33. So it's just fun now. I feel like I'm playing Monopoly, and it's just really exciting. I have properties that have good amount of equity now that I can, the whole ROE concept, I can sell that property, take the equity, and make that equity work a lot harder for me than by just keeping it inside the fourplex that it's in now, even though these are good properties. And so I wanted to reach where I don't need this money, but I wanted to take this money and influence my social circle and create a legacy for my family. But I wanted to earn $500,000 a month or $6 million a year. That was kind of the goal. And I thought that 500 doors was going to be the number that would help me get there. With some of the things that we're doing now, I think that we'll surpass that in time. And so I really don't know what that number looks like. It really doesn't matter too much to me either, Bill. I don't need that money. I love doing it, and I really enjoy it, and I want to be smart about it. I want to eventually have this be able to help a lot of my family and friends and charitable causes. That's the whole passion now. So if I can influence people for the positive and help others reach financial freedom and success, then that's a life, worth living and something to get up early about.
Wow, that's neat. That's really neat. Well, I wish you the best of luck there. You definitely have an analytical mind, and I think you can put together this success plan for yourself and far surpass your goals, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Well, we're getting close to the end here. I didn't mean to keep you as long as I have, but gosh, it's been great information. I think a lot of lot of solid stuff that people can hold on to. We have a session now that's sort of our wrap up, so to speak. We call it the Wrap It Up, and where I ask you a series of quick questions, and you give me sort of quick answers so that we can learn resources that you have used that have been of value to you in your real estate investing. So if you are ready, we can go ahead and wrap it up.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Bill.
You bet. Favorite real estate book?
Tax-Free Wealth by Tom Wilwright.
Good one. Very good one. How about your favorite business book?
The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. Those have been influential for me.
Yes. How about most valuable website for success other than your own?
With real estate, Bigger Pockets, I really enjoy.
Same here. This great resource. How about favorite app?
You know, I really don't have a favorite app. I go to websites all the time, so I don't know if I have one.
Nothing on your phone that kind of helps you in your sort of day-to-day stuff?
No, we use, I don't even remember the name of it for our taxes. Anytime we have receipts, I just take a picture and it keeps everything organized for tax purposes. And I don't even remember the name of it.
Well, maybe if you can, if you happen to come up with it, you can send me afterwards and we'll put it in the show notes. Yeah.
Yes.
How about favorite quote?
There was a book I read, David Wendahl, Multifamily Millions, where he said something that's had a lasting effect on me, where the sooner that you can control as much real estate as possible with as little money of your own out of pocket, the faster you will become wealthy or be able to accumulate wealth. And I butchered the quote, but the concept of it has really benefited and helped us in a lot of ways.
Oh, that's great. Well, we'll be able to get the exact one on that. That's one of our recommended books. We have our top 20 real estate books, and that's one of them. So we could probably find it in there and be able to get it exact. But that's a great quote. Great quote. And this is kind of our tough one here that no one wants to think about, but sort of our apocalyptic sort of question here. If you lost everything, I mean absolutely everything, and you're just down to your last $1,000 in cash, what would you do with that $1,000 to try to rebuild your real estate investing business?
Two things I would do. I've been there before. I've been where I only had $1,000 or less. Two things. One, I would do a mailing campaign to targeted areas in my community that I know are good places to invest, that I would be trying to negotiate a seller financing opportunity to buy their property, or I would borrow money from someone that I would season and borrow it for 6 months to a year, that then I would negotiate a 6 or 7% buyer's agent commission on purchasing their property and use an FHA loan with 3.5% to 5% down. And upon closing on the property, take that commission amount and use that to pay off the lender. And now I own a fourplex without any money that I owe anyone else. I think that would be a great start to the next deal that I'd be able to save and put money away to start all over again.
That's great. That's two really good ideas there. Very good. Wow. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that really like how you think and the things that you're doing. I would love to be able to at least point them in a direction that they could find out more about you or what you do. What's sort of the best way for people to get a hold of you? Yeah,
thank you. Creative Gains LLC at gmail.com. That's GAINS. Or our website's getcreativegains.com. A lot of people call our office manager. Her number's 801-362-0784. Her name's Lisa. Either of those would be great. I'd love to talk to anyone.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. Wow, we're at the end of our interview here, but Yeah, you've already been warned that all of our guests close us out with their best closing howl.
This may not be pretty, Bill, but I've worked hard on this.
Well, you're out in the country there. There's got to be something howling out in there in Utah. I mean, coyotes, if nothing else, right?
Yeah, we're out in the mountains, so that's what it's going to sound like. So,
well, if you are ready, let's give us your best old closing howl here. That was great.
Oh, man, I still need practice on that.
Oh, well, hey, that was a good one. That was a very good one. It had me a little scared there for a second, but it was really good.
It's been a lot of fun, Bill. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Jason. You've been a great guest, and I just appreciate you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you very much. Have a great day.
Yeah, and I just also want to thank all our old dog listeners out there, too, for joining us. I know there's a lot of other things you could be doing right now, but the fact that you've taken the time to join us means a lot. Please note everything that we discussed today, everything that Jason mentioned, as well as some of the links and so forth can be accessed in our detailed show notes on the Old Dogs website at olddogsreinetwork.com/blog. And just look for the episode with Jason, our great guest here. That is the show for today. Remember, cash flow is king and real estate investing the means. Until next time, keep moving forward and may God bless.
Thank you very much for visiting the Old Dogs REI Network. We would greatly appreciate if you would stop by iTunes and let us know what you think of the show. We would love if you could subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and write a review. The more ratings and reviews we receive, the more visible the podcast will be to others. Thank you.